Coordinators of the Hospitality House in San Antonio, Texas. It's a partnership of many faith communities, the Interfaith Welcome Coalition, Raíces, and the 4 organizations of God, among dozens of very dedicated volunteers. We're often the first place that release families from both Dilley and Carter County within hours of being released. And we provide these families housing, most of them very short term, while they prepare to either get on a Greyhound bus or an airplane to destinations all across the country to reunite with families and to continue with their asylum cases. During their short stay with us, we provide them with clothing, which is critical now that the winter months are coming, and these women often are released not even with a sweatshirt, going to places in the far north. We provide them with meals of familiar food from the places they're from, prepared by one of the people you heard speak today. And then we help explain their Greyhound transports throughout the country, and also their connecting flights, and to help navigate TSA and so forth, because it's for many their first time traveling. On October 23rd through November 1st, we became a catch-all for these facilities as they began to come into compliance with the decision. And in that week alone, we saw over 350 people at our shelter, which is set up on a typical day to house maybe 30. During that time, we dealt with a situation that we see all too often. So during our daily intake process, we're capturing different information pieces and then offering, for example, very basic medicine for fevers, for coughs, and so forth. We had a mother from Honduras with a 5-year-old daughter who was showing a very high fever. We gave her some ibuprofen and monitored the situation throughout the night. That night we received about 55 people. At about midnight, we heard hysterical crying from this 5-year-old. Long story short, we took her to the children's ER because when we took her temperature, it was at 105.5. We were worried that we would have a fatality on our hands, and so we rushed her to ER. At 6 a.m. the next morning, we left the facility to go get the medicines for pneumonia. And I do not pry into people's medical records, but I felt compelled to read the child's medical records, which every person leaving these facilities, just very quickly, they were cleared for travel. No mention of this condition, no mention of the fact that this family was going to get on a Greyhound bus the next morning and travel for 2.5 days and maybe risk the life of that 5-year-old. So I just ask you and warn you that licensing these facilities that have been completely unaccountable in their history, run by for-profit prison companies, is being complicit in that cover-up, and the fact that though both facilities were built in isolated towns in Texas means they want to keep that out of sight, out of mind. Please, please protect children. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Rosalie Weisfeld, and I thank you all for giving us the opportunity to come before you to testify against designating detention centers, prisons, as licensed child care centers. A prison is not an appropriate place to be designated as a child care center. You have heard overwhelming testimony here today from many eyewitnesses. I as well am one. I was born and reared in McAllen, una comunidad en la frontera de Texas, a gateway through which many, probably most of the women and children currently being detained in these prison facilities first enter Texas. I have seen firsthand some of these mothers with their children. When they first entered into the United States, many of them were given safe haven at Sacred Heart Church in downtown McAllen. They came seeking refuge and comfort from the violence and chaos that they were fleeing from their home countries. As one of the hundreds of volunteers who offered assistance to these refugees, I saw these women, small women with small children, who arrived hungry and tired to a place they didn't know, with hollow eyes and weak stomachs. All they could keep down was a bowl of broth, a little bit of soup, and maybe a few crackers. A glass of water is all they asked for. They were given a place to shower and a set of clean clothes to change into because they fled hurriedly from the violence that they left behind. They came wearing only what was on their backs. Some of them had a few little items wrapped in a small bag, but mostly they just came holding on to the hands of their children. They came seeking hope. They came seeking a safe place for their children. As one woman said, and I translate, better to die on the road to safety than to die on my footstep. These mothers have suffered enough. They are not criminals. They are refugees seeking safety. They were fleeing violence and poverty. Allow the children to stay with their mothers. Do not give the prisons a veil of humane respectability by granting them a child care license. If it is within your control to release these mothers and children, please do so. If not, just please do not license prisons as child care facilities. By opening our hearts together, we can give these women with their children the opportunity to see what the United States can really offer, what they came to this country seeking, a place of love and hope, a better future for all. Thank you so much.
Sarah Watkins.
Do you have something detachable? Otherwise I can yell. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, excellent. My name is Sarah Watkins, and I'm here today to join dozens of others in opposing the licensing of these detention centers as child care facilities. Since January, I've worked with a coalition of lawyers and advocates as a volunteer legal advocate, helping many of these women, children, and families to exit detention centers. And I can tell you that anything that looks like a prison should not be licensed as a child care center. I come to this work from disability rights work, where I've spent many, many years looking at how we deinstitutionalize children with assorted disabilities, right? And the state has said, the Department of Aging and Disability Services has said, and DFPS has said for years, that children belong in families, that children do not belong in large institutions, and we've begun to make strides in bringing children with disabilities into family settings and to reunite them with their families in the community. And I have to ask, how is this any different? If you look at the sort of trauma that these mothers and their children have experienced, this is the sort of trauma that falls under disability. And whether this trauma is temporary and creates temporary mental health issues, or whether this trauma is long-term and creates permanent disabilities, has a lot to do with how long these children and these mothers spend in detention and with what sort of treatment they receive upon exiting detention centers. So if the FPS, if the state is really serious about making sure that children do not remain in institutions, then that needs to apply to all children. So I ask you, please do not license these facilities as child care centers, because they are not. Thank you.
Pues yo estoy aquí en San Antonio por mi hijo, esperando a que me lo den y pues volar para Atlanta. Pues me lo tienen, dicen, aquí con una familia. Yo pues la vez pasada que me trajeron, solo me trajeron aquí a estas oficinas y aquí lo miré. Bueno, que llegué al punto de tener ya los 2 meses de estar en Dili y los de ICE no me daban respuesta. Estuve 1 mes completito sin llamar, pero ni escuchar ni la voz del niño. Ay, sí, te mamó. Ay, mi perrito.
Tengo una mochila, tengo otra mochila.
Y otra mochila. Ay, mi